Zoro's relationship to spoiler wasn't explored yet. I'll start with my conclusion. At a bare minimum, Zoro's Shimotsuki roots will be explored and, at some point, he will visit Ryuma's grave. 1. Zoro and the Shimotsuki. The clan of the Shimotsuki, which means Frost Moon, has ties everywhere from Ryuma the Dragonslayer, to recently deceased daimyos Ishimaru and Yasui, to a small dojo in the East Blue. Honestly, I liked the flashback we got in the King fight, but because of Zoro's consistent parallels to Sanji, who got an entire backstory revamp in WCI, I can see why you'd be disappointed that this was all he got. Imagine your friend gets an ice cream sundae and later a fresh cherry on top, while you only get a cherry. Regardless, I think there was still a vastly overlooked piece of information revealed. This is what we know. Zoro had consistent and constant parallels made in character, feats, and resemblance to two otherwise unrelated Shimotsuki, Ryuma and Ishimaru. Unrelated, as in, lacking narrative meaning to their parallel, as of course they are related by blood. Even before we see each of their faces, this arc takes Zoro slaying a dragon in Punk Hazard, a direct reference to Ryuma slaying a dragon over the old capital of Wano. It goes deeper than feats. Wano was constantly compared to hell within the arc, and the slaying happened on their side of Punk Hazard that was permanently ablaze. Also, I can't find wording I like, but consider the Shimotsuki's overrepresentation as daimyos as being lords of hell. Besides that, Zoro's village is named for the Shimotsuki, specifically Kuina's grandfather Smith of both Enma and Wado Ichimonji, who escaped the borders 60-ish years ago. We also know that one of the longest-running questions surrounding Zoro is the relationship and importance a specific character has to his life. A character of unknown origin, from the East Blue, with uncanny resemblance to now confirmed Shimotsuki Kuina. Yes, I believe Tashigi is the reason the Shimotsuki plotline was left open-ended. In whatever moment a blood relationship between Kuina and Zoro is revealed, it makes a lot of sense Tashigi will either play an important role or be present at the same time, eventually being revealed as a Shimotsuki herself. There could also be something more specific to relate her and Kuina, but I believe this at a baseline. Tashigi is confirmed to resemble Kuina much in the same way Zoro is confirmed to look like Ishimaru or Ryuma. Wano was and was not in many ways Zoro's arc. But I think we forget that the Straw Hats are all protagonists. Weird character focus issues post-time skip or not. I wouldn't call it high expectations to believe Zoro will be given focus in an arc in the future, before his assumedly endgame fight with Mihawk. 2. Ryuma, God of the Blade. I can't pretend to give a comprehensive analysis on Zoro's relationship to divinity, so here's my basic understanding. Zoro has potentially the most unique relationship to gods in One Piece outside of anyone who doesn't have a D in the middle of their name. While he has many references to being a Buddhist, likely why he still prays when parting from Yubashiri in Thriller Bark, he seems to be loose enough with it to accept most anything he sees in the One Piece world, no matter how spiritually thematic. Everything from smirking as he says, "I don't pray to God," in Skypiea, however many times he's fashioned himself in relation to hell after everything he saw pre-Wano, even losing early on to Mihawk. Seriously, the world's strongest swordsman is a walking Dracula reference carrying a giant cross sword and giant cross necklace, who's now a part of the Cross Guild, who travels around the sea in a coffin with a cross-shaped sail. He even has an epithet making explicit note to his eyes which share a unique pattern with Zunisha and I'll spare you the analysis on why an immortal and the king of the world are deify see. Never say Oda was subtle. In Sabaradi, while Usopp is actually the first besides Luffy we see Koa celestial dragon, it's Zoro that is the first person, and only besides Luffy and Imjosgard, to strike at one. You could even frame Zoro as beating a god, king, a Lunarian. Seen as a race of gods the celestial dragons usurped, in a 1v1 this very arc, on top of being the first person to scar Kaido, who at least has been referenced as a wisdom king since Odin. Not to mention, literally seeing the Grim Reaper. I know there's debate about what this meant, but it isn't relevant to this post. To be clear, even if the explanation is that the Grim Reaper Zoro saw was simply the narrative exaggerating the effects of the mink medicine, it is still very important that Zoro felt powerless in front of a deity, woke up a week later, and said he fought through hell as a gag. I can't remember more than that right now, just be aware that it's there. As I wondered many times, what is Ryuma's grave, exactly? Having no corpse, and no sword, what meaning would even be found, to the audience, from the visit, outside of fulfilling a moment that was set up? We know Zoro has a sort of ritual from when he sent off Yubashiri in Thriller Bark, but shouldn't visiting Ryuma's grave be anything but ritual? However, on top of anything from this arc Zoro can now reflect on, we learned a very specific epithet and parallel drawn with Ryuma from the Wano arc, God of the Blade, compared specifically Thoth Legend of Joy Boy. While I could say both were also infamously compared to Luffy, Zunisha's words are enough confirmation for me to say the distinction between Joy Boy and Luffy is cyclical. Whether Joy Boy had the Nika fruit, Joy Boy is Nika, Nika is Joy Boy, or it's something even stranger, there's an explicit equivalence between the heartbeat of Gear 5, a Zoan transformation, and Joy Boy himself. Which gives us Joy Boy, the sun god Nika, and Ryuma Frost Moon, the sword god. Now carried on through Luffy and as has all but been confirmed Zoro. Should also reference that the grave of a god was put in the middle of hell, as again, Wano was compared to hell constantly throughout the arc. Now with the context from earlier, what could we see from Ryuma's grave? At best, one of the most introspective scenes Zoro will have in the series. And at worst, it won't happen. If it does, a respectful prayer scene akin to Thriller Bark is likely, and I also imagine he himself takes Shusui back to mark the grave. Though now their separation is even more fitting in many ways. What Shusui was will be represented better through Zoro becoming great enough to surpass Ryuma and turn his own blades black, potentially even before this supposed visit occurs. In fact, the relationship he has to his swords is a very interesting context. The Shimotsuki lineage can now directly tie Wado Ichimonji, belonging of his home village and oldest friend, symbolic of his drive to become WSS, to not only Zoro but Ryuma himself. Enma, a gift from the Kazukis and remnant of Odin, can as well, though I don't feel sure of its meaning beyond Wano. Leaving only Katetsu 3, one of his more overlooked swords, it is still a thematically important keepsake narratively. He plucked it from a barrel in Loggertown where he and Luffy infamously tested fate, and the crew finalized their commitment by entering the Grand Line. I would argue it represents his crew, but important to note is how Tashigi was there when he received it. By my logic, Tashigi is the reason Zoro hasn't visited the grave. Maybe she will need to be present in some manner, maybe she will be a topic of internal discussion for Zoro, maybe her presence was only needed so Zoro could reflect on someone who serves as both his future and his past. I can't see any specific conclusion. Though Odin will likely be brought up again. He's maybe the third most important dedicated swordsman behind Ryuma and Mihawk, and incredibly important to Oshimaru, a user of two swords that was seen alive at an age and timeframe that could allow him to be Zoro's father. I would find it interesting if some kind of glimpse or memory of him is why his son originally thought using more swords would make him stronger. Reflecting on the deifici legacy of these men from Wano, especially after their swords were so important to him, unlocking advanced conqueror's haki could reveal what he thinks about, honestly, anything. I can see how I'm imagining the perfect missing scene that adds everything I wanted from Zoro narratively this arc, or now in from post-time